So basically my point of making the video is just to talk about the lack of, as much as I wish there wasn't a lack, the lack of support for leaving domestic abuse. I think there can be support leaving domestic abuse, especially if it's been more overt, like if someone is in a situation where they actually have received black eyes and bruises and things that can be photographed, where there are police reports. I would have called the police a couple of, really just maybe 2 or 3 times in all of the 26 years, because I was in church circles that basically thought like the world is one sphere and the church is the other. And so if you are a Christian, you're not to look to the world, to the quote world, for help and resources, but you are to look to the church, which is why I spent many, many, many years trying again and again and again to reach out to church leaders and their wives, or all different kinds of Christians, to try to find the support that I was looking for, which I never did find. So that's why I didn't, I never pressed charges and things like that. But I will say, whenever the police arrived, he had usually already left and gotten in the car and driven off and didn't come home for a couple days, or he would have just completely changed his demeanor and composed himself, which actually, as I learned about things once I left, that really did show that it was on purpose. It wasn't that he lost control. He was very much in control of himself, but he was choosing to treat me in the aggressive and awful abusive manner. But he was fully capable of, just like that, switching up his, turning on the good side, so that the police or whoever would be present wouldn't really see what I was dealing with. So I think if there's more overt abuse, black eyes, bruises, you can find help. You can find help in the justice system, hopefully. I'm not sure that I trust that there's always justice in the justice system, but perhaps. People are readily willing to believe you when you have black eyes and bruises. I didn't know I was being abused. There was always doubt. There was always a question of, well, I'm not sure it's really that. I don't think it's really that. Because if it was, and I was going to church leader after church leader and their wives, and I was describing X, Y, or Z and all these different things, then wouldn't someone have said, oh, you're being abused, Jennifer, you can't stay in that. That's nothing that you should be submitting to. Where inwardly I knew it was wrong, and I was pleading for help, pleading for someone to help me in the cause, help me. I had to learn once I finally left that I don't need anyone to agree with me that it's wrong. It's just wrong. There's no one else's permission that I need. My intuition and my gut, what I believe about something, is enough for me, for my life. It doesn't have to be that I have to convince mother, sister, brother, cousin, church leader, pastor, whoever. They don't have to agree. They get to make the decisions for their own life. They're for their lives, and I get to make the decision of what's okay and what's not okay for me. And yet here I am 2+ years, and I still don't have flesh and blood, someone walking beside me support. I have found podcasts. I kind of did podcast binging for quite some time. Even counseling and things like that people are quick to say, well, you need counseling, or your kids need counseling. I was a Christian still, so I found a Christian counselor. And my Christian counselor was at best questionable. And there were times where I was definitely questioning her mindset, and I really couldn't put my finger on what was wrong, but something was off. And without mentioning names or anything, I ended up, through kind of a friend of a friend, there was a lady I had known for a lot longer, actually. She lived domestic abuse. I knew her when she was with her Christian husband, and they had seemingly been the perfect couple. She was and is still Christian, but I was a Christian then, and she knew the counselor, and they had been roommates at one time. She knew her very well. And she said, is so-and-so your counselor? She knew I was seeing someone in Virginia Beach, and I said, yes, it's so-and-so. Why do why? She said, well, she hasn't really dealt with her childhood trauma. She was extensively abused, and she really shouldn't be practicing in the field that she's practicing in. And she loses her temper with many of her patients, and that she knew firsthand, from people that were also patients of this particular, psychologist. Anyway, I found out kind of in that roundabout way that kind of my gut feeling was right, but I hadn't been able to put my finger on what wasn't. what wasn't right. That was enough for me to realize that I needed to stop seeing her. It's also very expensive, even after insurance. It was probably $90 a visit, and I was trying to go weekly there I ended up probably just going for about 2 or 3 months. When I found out from this female kind of friend of mine, she's a medical doctor, who knew the psychologist and had been her roommate, when I found out that, there were real reasons to not trust and not continue seeing the psychologist, I didn't go back. I mentioned that just as a side note, it's so easy to say, well, just go to the domestic abuse shelter or just find a good therapist. Sometimes people try all of those things and they still don't find the support there. It kind of reminds me when I don't really like when people are standing on the street corner panhandling, and I think often that they are phonies, but there are people who are really homeless. And I know when I had my soap business, I would do the Portsmouth Farmers Market every Saturday selling soap, and I became friends with a homeless lady named Vanessa, and I know that she had a tent that she lived in, and there was kind of a camp somewhere in Portsmouth that they were legally, they were able to be and have their tent, and they were still homeless. But even with the homeless, people act like, well, why don't they just go to a shelter? Because shelters, although I'm not saying the shelters are never useful, but there are downsides to all of those. You lose your freedom if you go into somewhere like that, and they're not ideal. I'm not saying we shouldn't have shelters. I think we should have domestic abuse shelters as well. But maybe no one thinks that people try these different avenues and are told things like, oh, you have 6 minor kids. We won't be able to help you because you need a house, not an apartment. And we're used to people having 2 kids. We have sponsors who will pay 70% of their rent of their apartment indefinitely so that they can get on their feet, so they can hold down a job and the cost of living isn't killing them and they can get on their feet. You don't really warrant having you're too many people for an apartment. You need a house, and no one is going to sponsor you with 6 kids and yourself. No one's going to sponsor you. So I'm sorry, we can't help you. No one of all the people, strangers and associates, just random people who have said to me, oh, well, why don't you just go to the domestic abuse shelter, don't realize that I have, and what I've been told. And I've been surprised by some of the things that I've been told. I've been surprised after seeing a counselor and trusting her with my innermost, personal backstory and molestation, all of that, to find out that she's not very trustworthy. And it was kind of a waste of my time and a waste of my trust. I just think that nobody really considers these things, that maybe people really do try and really are like, I want to find employment, but I have all these kids. I can't just leave my kids at home. I can't leave my kids at home and put my 14-year-old or my 16-year-old in charge. My 16-year-old, definitely has some behavioral issues, but even if she was the perfect little angel, it wouldn't be right to put all of that responsibility of watching 5 kids on her. Let's just say, even if it was just for the summer and I had a job that I could put all my kids in school, even though I couldn't have last year because I had a 4-year-old, it still is too much to put on a 16-year-old or a 14-year-old. And if I'm going to pay someone per hour, whatever I'm going to pay someone to come into my home, let's say, and watch my 6 kids while I go to work, let's say for the summer, right? Hypothetically, what am I going to be coming ahead if you add in the cost of travel, like gas or whatever, all those kind of things? Whatever I can make per hour is going to be probably very close to what I'll be paying per hour for someone to come in my home and watch 6 kids. I just don't think that, I think my dynamic is more complicated than maybe someone who just has 2 kids. I mean, most people my age, I'm 45, most people my age, just like my older 2, are 25 and 24. People do not have little kids usually when they're my age, right? Or maybe sometimes they've waited, they didn't have kids as early as I did. I was 19 and 20 when I had my oldest 2. Maybe they were in their 30s, but they still don't have the amount of kids that I do and the age range that I do. So I just feel like when it comes to the things that we say to people, especially when we don't know those people, but sometimes even if we do know those people, we give kind of pat answers. We give generic answers because we don't want to really get involved. Another thing I will say that I ran into, especially when I was still a Christian, is this idea of if we need help, just to reach out. You know what? That is not always, it's not always that someone isn't willing to reach out. Sometimes, like myself, people are not too proud and not too shy to speak the truth and be vulnerable and to say, I'm dealing with this is super hard, I need some help, or some things that have happened in my life very recently, and I'm calling someone I don't even know very well and I'm saying, I really could use a friend. It's sometimes you can be, like I have been, vulnerable enough, open and honest enough, try with multiple people enough. It's like Sometimes asking for help still doesn't bring about help. Sometimes being vulnerable still isn't enough. Sometimes you still find yourself in a really hard circumstance and you have tried many, many, many avenues to find help. You have looked for the resources. You have been told that since COVID, all the Section 8 welfare housing, which I would have never wanted to be, relied upon, but in a situation where I find myself, okay, well, I could use that help, but they don't even have a wait list anymore. Since COVID, it's so oversaturated. They don't even putting people on a wait list. The wait list would be years and years and years long, and they had wait lists, but they finally stopped getting more names to put on the wait list. It's so oversaturated. So now I knew a lady online leaving around the same time that I did. She's probably 15 years younger than me. She had 2 children. She lives in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has excellent programs. She is going to college for free. She has free childcare, and they put her up in a free apartment. And that is the difference of Virginia, Commonwealth of Virginia, and Pennsylvania, with what they have set up for women, predominantly women with children who are leaving domestic abuse. All she had to do was tell her story a couple different times, and she received an enormous amount of support. I am happy for her. It's not that I would wish her or anyone to not have that support, but depending upon what state you live in, there is not always that kind of support set up. So I just want to raise awareness, because I feel like unless you've walked in my moccasins, as they say, you don't really know. And it's so easy to give pat answers and pat suggestions and say, oh, well, why don't you just this? Oh, well, don't you not realize this? Sometimes people are not imbeciles. Sometimes people have really, really, really tried, and they have continued to try, and they have tried until they're just so sick of trying, and they try still. So I feel a little bit on the defense today, and I think it's okay. Like I said, I think it's okay to feel the feelings that you feel and work through, and I think it's okay that I'm making this video, and the things I'm saying in this video I don't regret. My attitude will improve as I am continuing to work through the things that I'm dealing with and the lack of support. But it's okay to have these, unmet expectations and just talk about, what is this like? So raising awareness, just like with racism, raising awareness, domestic abuse, it's hard to get out of, especially the kind that's more subtle, especially the kind that's more hidden, more covert, where there are no bruises or black eyes. But there certainly is, it still is physical abuse often. It is emotional. Wherever there's physical abuse, there is always emotional abuse. There's financial abuse. There's physical abuse on the level, even if you don't have black eyes, usually you're being manipulated. And I've talked about this in one of my other videos, but like there's things like marital rape going on. But also I would have been pushed around a lot, shoved, had my arms held back. Had where I'm sitting on a sofa that was not against a wall, and had the spouse tip the whole sofa because he's that much stronger than me, and I'm on the sofa tipping the whole sofa back, which is scaring me. Obviously there's no support, it was not against a wall, it was like the kind of sectioning a room, and being told to hold my head up, and he's raising his fist at me. So that's physical abuse, and even just him raising his fist at me other times where he would have cornered me in our bedroom or something, and he would have raised his fist at me, and he was in full fury. He was as if he was going to punch me. That's physical abuse, even if he never did punch me. Those are the times I wish he would have, because then maybe I would have been able to even realize myself what it was and gotten out. But my boundary, I didn't know about boundaries, but my line that he knew, if he ever like hit me, struck me, punched me, I was not going to stay. People don't realize, what domestic abuse can look like. It does not, I think most of the time, it doesn't look the way a movie portrays. It doesn't look like the black eye. I'm not better than anybody, but like, I think that's a whole different level of if someone is staying and they do have black eyes and they have been punched and those kind of overt things, like that's a whole different level of lack of self-worth. For me, I'm sure there was still a lack of self-worth in underlying ways, but like I knew I didn't deserve to be treated the way he was treating me, and it was just this Christian dogma and this submission and suffering dogma that was keeping me suppressed. So I'm just wanting to raise awareness, and I think there's a lot of people like myself. They say it's 1 in 4 of any Christian anything that calls itself Christian in any way, shape, or form. There's 1 in 4, every 1 in 4 ladies sitting in any pews anywhere in any church, 1 in 4 will at some point in their life find themselves in domestic abuse. That is huge. It is it is such a insidious problem, and it's a problem that by and large people have blinders on, and even when people are desperate for help and reach out for help, they often don't find the help, just like I didn't. They don't find the help. And even now, if they speak to people, they might put me in their mind, they might put me in that bracket of, oh, she was being punched and bruises were on her and she just was staying. What kind of loser is she? No, it was so subtle. And there was this whole, this whole mindset, this whole like lifestyle mindset with every person I knew, where everyone thought I just needed to try harder. Everyone, including myself, thought I needed to try harder and be a better, more godly wife and submit more to this man and win him to Christ and all these things. I just want to raise awareness. I don't know if anyone's helped by any of my videos. Sometimes I think about deleting it all and just calling it a day, but I'm not. And yeah, what do you think about what I'm saying? Do you know anybody who's maybe tried to reach out for help? I don't think most people are near as outgoing and persistent as I am. If I was shy and had been in this situation, how much less? But if you're not shy and you're not unwilling to be vulnerable and to reach out for help over and over and over and over, you still don't find help. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, I hate to be a shy person and be in the situation, but in the end, there's no difference really, because I haven't found support. So there's a real need and there's a real lack. And as much as I wish to not be in any kind of a lack mindset, and I'm not overall, these things that I'm talking about are real. 1 in 4, like, just think about that. And think about, when I say that's of what calls itself Christian, that's not just a certain sect here, that's encompassing all of what, calls itself Christian. That's pretty huge. Remember, in that way, like, I don't know if half of our population in America still would, in name at least, consider themselves Christian. But 1 in 4, it's pretty huge. So anyway, this is my video today. See ya.